Year three in Hong Kong brought some really big changes. Up until this point, um, my family had all been ministering together in a troubled youth congregation. Summers were spent teaching English and guitar to large groups of students to try to attract them to church, and playing Uno as a means to start conversations, which allowed us to speak to young people who were spending their days, sometimes their nights too, in the streets of Hong Kong. In the third year, my church small group decided to change the part of the church that they were in. So we were in the troubled youth congregation. They wanted to go to what was referred to as the New Territory South congregation, which was the part of Hong Kong that those people would be living in. And roughly the same time. So changing congregations meant I changed to a new pastor, which was really good for me because my new pastor was not a missionary, was somebody local, and so his focus was more overall on building the ministry. He wasn't too worried about who was who, and so I was allowed to be a missionary kid, and I was trained with other youth to become a small group leader. And I started attending church separate from my parents and my younger sister, who stayed with the troubled youth congregation. The other big change, I was a junior in high school, and in homeschooling at this point we were doing correspondence, so I was completely following the U.S. system. And in Hong Kong that would be Form 5, but we don't graduate, like the U.S. system, high school doesn't end until Form 6. So that happened, and I decided to take basically 1 year off of homeschooling and finishing high school. I decided I would rather graduate late because I wanted to take, my church had a kind of a Bible school, like a ministry training school, connected with about 100 other churches in the city. It was known as the Cell Church Network. So they opened this ministry training college, was what their title was. And I decided to take that. I was the first English speaking non-Chinese student of this school. I was in a class of about 50 students, and it was a 1 year course that was set up basically to cram 4 years of traditional Bible school into 1 year. So it was 4 hours a day of class, 4 hours a day of practical ministry in your church, and 4 hours a day of homework. And there was no summer break, so it was a 365-day 1 year course. It was very, very intense. Going through it, there were times where I wasn't sure I was even gonna make it through. Sometimes I felt a little crazy to have done it. I was passing tests that were all in Chinese without fluent written Chinese yet, by taking guesses based on combination of what I could read and my existing knowledge of the scripture. Needless to say, before this year was over, I'd hit full fluency. I was allowed to do my homework in English, but I often misunderstood the directions for my homework, and so I would end up taking 4 times as long to get it done than all my other classmates, because I thought what I was being assigned was harder than it was. And as part of our assignment, we were supposed to basically plant a church small group from scratch. So, they sent three of us out for street outreach all summer. We went into schools. In Hong Kong at the time, it was permitted for outside groups to come into schools and speak to students, and you could actually present the gospel in schools, which we did. And as a result of all of that, I became a church small group leader for the first time. That presented a really big challenge because my experience with the drama team had been somewhat traumatic, and I had developed some ideas about myself not being fit for leadership. So when I got assigned to take over the small group, and initially I wasn't the leader, and the original leader kind of disappeared for a while, and then, you know, everybody else had a relationship with her and not with me, so they all disappeared too. I did take it rather personally. Other highlights to note, I had done worship leading in church small group for a couple of years at this point. Singing Cantonese is easier than speaking it because of the tones. You know, at least with worship music, you didn't have to bother about getting the right tone. I mean, technically you did, but nobody did. But yeah, so it was also that year was my first time leading worship in bigger groups up to 300 people. Just me and a guitar, not necessarily a team at all. And there was a lot of growth. You know, we kicked off school with worship every day, you know, a lot of praying for each other, a lot of, you know, I made some great friends, some of whom I'm still in touch with from that year. And it was exhausting. I slept probably 6 hours a night, and I slept more than some of my classmates. I had some who were also on church staff in addition to doing this course, and so they were sleeping 2 hours a night and getting rather sick from it. You know, we were so exhausted that we could sleep anywhere, pretty much. Like, there was a spot in the back of the class that everybody fought for, because if you sat in that spot, the teacher, the lecturer could not see you sleeping. And if you got that spot, you could, you know, get a little more. And for a while, there was a group in my support small group with the ministry training school. You know, we'd show up and sleep until someone was brought in to put a stop to it, because our poor small group leader became very frustrated with that. It was there that I received my first training in deliverance, learned about Chinese specific issues, received first training in pastoral counseling, active listening skills, understanding triggers, that kind of thing, and inner healing. So, and I received my first prayer for those things that year. So it was quite a year. And I did graduate at the end of it, not with a specific grade. I was given a plus for everything, which means essentially they decided that they were going to let it easy for me and that I would pass, because they realized how challenging it really was. So yeah, that was my Bible school year.